city, I've been browsing. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 250 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. You can tell I got that glow on me. It's not just the sunburn from the pool. It is August. We have, redrafts coming up. We have the last of people's rookie drafts. We have the season. I mean, we got to see real football, if you can call the Hall of Fame game real football. But man, we are this close. Things are changing. We've had June and July and all these other months where we're talking about our buys and how that goes. Today, it's August now. We got to talk about filling up our rosters. We got to talk about all the exciting stuff. Nobody better to chop that up with than my main man FFSnoog. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Dad, because you know what August means? It means Dynasty Dad approves, Dynasty buys, sells, and bargain buys comes out. So it's always a good time. Start of the month.
Today is Malik Monday, too. You got to go check out our YouTube page. 15 minutes done by Brock Dynasty. Make sure you guys follow him. 15 minutes of nothing but Malik Neighbors Dynasty trades where Snoog and I are. He is the next foundational wide receiver. You guys got to get him before he blows up. And we've been telling you that since, February? Now all of a sudden he's gone from affordable to, oh, crap, this is a lot, to pretty soon, you're not going to be able to touch him. So if you guys can go out there and buy Malik Neighbors, you go do that now. But we're going to talk about some of our favorite buys in August, some of the guys that were really going out there and making moves. Snoog, we've kind of gone over a lot of different mentalities on how we go about making trades, how we go about finding things. What's your philosophy when we get to August? Because we've talked about June and July. We're like, there's no reason to buy your running back now. He could get injuries from here to then. There's no reason. You don't need to fill out your roster in June because you're starting to accumulate value, not starting lineups. Now we're in August. We look at it and we're 20 plus days from the NFL season. You got training camp. There is some risk there of things. How do you go about starting to construct rosters now that we're in August?
Yeah, I've been starting to make tons of trades lately. I mean, right when you get to this time frame, it's like, if you really want to contend, you got to start buying if you haven't been already. You have to take risks. It's just part of the game. I like to wait until the day training camp ends. I go on a spree. I'll spend a couple hours a day or at night right before bed just putting in trades, seeing what I need to do. One trick I always did, I know you do it as well, Dad, is I go through each team, and if I see a weak spot in my lineup, I take that player, I put it on my bench. I leave that spot open so I know
I love that.
That's just an easier way to get ahead of it. Everyone's like, oh, how do you keep up with 20 leagues? It's like there's little strategies and tricks you can do to just make everything more efficient and quicker. That's one of my things that I love to do because it's like, all right, I know I don't feel comfortable starting Zamir White, but I have draft capital and other players on my bench that I'm not going to use that I can use to grab Joe Mixon or Amari Cooper that's cheap, and he's a big upgrade from Zamir White for this year. Hopefully, at least that's what we think. So.
And that's some upper level thinking because once you get multiple leagues and stuff like that, everybody wants their roster to look good. Everybody wants to be projected to win week one. But as of right now, none of that really matters. We all do it just to see what it looks like. You know what I mean? But I think it's a good time to go ahead and, you know what? If my starting running back is Kendre Miller, then take him out of your roster, even if you're rebuilding, so you can kind of see what you need, where those spots are. Snoog and I are great at doing that, as far as going through your rosters, and guys that are in the Discord or are in our Patreon Discord chat all the time. They're like, it's right there's another alert. But there's guys
wake
that are
that
like,
ass
hey,
up, Snoog.
there's guys that are like, hey, what's the weak spot of this roster? And Snoog and I'll be like, boom, diagnose this right here. What's your strength? Okay, you have 6 wide receiver 3s sitting on your bench, and your running back 2 is down at this level. Let's combine these two. Let's start to move ourselves into that area where we're going to compete. And now's the best time, honestly. If you guys are going to join the Patreon, and when I say Patreon, guys are like, I don't know what that is. It's our Discord chat. It has all of our content. It has all of our ranks. Top 250. Right now, if you sign up, you'll get my redraft QR code. Snoogs will be in there soon, where it'll literally take you to our draft cheat sheets.
And for you boomers, and for the boomers out there that don't know what Discord is, if you've used Slack, it's basically the same exact thing. But people use it for
You're attacking my boomer group.
But people use it for work and stuff, Slack,
Yeah.
but Discord's like the gaming version and a
Yeah.
community like chatting version of that. But it's like the same thing. You got channels. We have all our channels. Everything's organized nicely. We're still adding in things. We're building out the redraft portion, the underdog portion. So tons of value in there for you guys. And then
It's the best time because right now you're going to get help with redraft. You're going to get help with dynasty trades. You're going to get help with rebuilds. And then once you get to the season, we're going to have start sit sections. We're going to have sections where, you guys see what waiver guys to pick up. You're going to see every single room, no matter what you want. There's rooms for you to go in there and talk. There's DM. It gives you access to both Snoog and I in the DMs. Right now, there are 330 guys talking shop 24/7. Don't miss out on that. Now, we're going to talk about our buys here. And what I always do is, we talk about your rebuilding, your contending, and your bargain buys. We talk about, how much you should pay. And now we've shifted from those 24 price tags to 25s. And when we talk about 25s, we can't say 25, 106 because we're not quite sure where we're at yet now. So we're going to kind of do things for example, my contending buy for the tight end would be like Trey McBride, which is a mid 25 first plus. And if you guys have questions what those pluses are, go ahead and hit us up. And if you have questions if you're in the Discord, you're in the Patreon, a lot of guys keep DMing me like, give me a bunch of trade solutions to get Dalton Kincaid. Okay, I could do that, and I could do that for every league. But if you're in there, I'm going to do it for you. You're like, show me that guy's roster of Dalton Kincaid. Show me your roster. Okay, you're going to trade Mark Andrews in a second for Dalton Kincaid and Zach Moss. Boom, you're done. That's your roster. He's going to go for it. And then we'll go back and forth, and that's how we help you guys with trades. Snoop, Let's talk first about the quarterback position. So if this is one where you and I have it completely figured out already, where if you look at my roster ownership of quarterbacks, I'm already set. All my rosters are completely set. But who are some guys that if your roster isn't set, some quarterbacks that you really want to buy right now? I'm going to go with my first one, and I still don't understand how he is as cheap as he is, but it's Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott still doesn't cost a mid-first or early first in 25. He's still in that mid-first plus area. Like, I think you could go ahead and offer a guy like Daniel Jones or offer a guy like Geno Smith or Matthew Stafford plus a first and get to Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott, year in, year out, if you look at what he's done over the last 5 years, I mean, last year, depending on your format, he was QB3 or QB4. Every single year, he's in the last 6, he's been inside the top 12. In the last 4, he's inside the top 8. He's literally a cheat code, a free space. And people are like, well, what about CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb is going to get locked up. They're going to lock him up. What if Dak Prescott leaves? Snoog, I saw a tweet the other day. I'm like, Dak Prescott to the Rams now that Matthew Stafford's contract is done after this season? You're like, there are still, Dak Prescott is an elite level quarterback. He's someone that's going to win you championships. If I'm in win now, he's like that A.J. Brown of the quarterback position where it doesn't matter what your direction is. The value doesn't make sense for what the production is. Go buy Dak Prescott. Make yourself an offer. I think you give up 2 random firsts or you give up a mid first plus those lower level quarterbacks that have risk. Those guys that are worth a second. Get yourself Dak Prescott. Go win a championship.
I could see Dak Prescott being a Jet if he left the Cowboys. Throwing a Garrett Wilson with Breece
if
Hall.
they don't lock him up, you look at, oh man, that would be
there's so
sexy.
many, the Rams, the Jets, there's so many teams that would go all in on getting him. Giants with Neighbors and Dabble, like that'd be fire. There's a lot of good
and the part that
spots for
people really start to have problems with is they start to separate fantasy versus real life. And everybody's
like, I don't give a
Jay,
shit if he wins the Super Bowl.
They're like, but Jaden Daniels and Anthony Richardson aren't good passers. I don't care. They're going to rush for 800 yards and they're going to be a QB1. Well, Dak Prescott doesn't win the game. Who cares? Yeah. He's got to be putting up dynasty points for you. He's a top 5 quarterback, set it and forget it, that you're able to buy right now at QB 14 in dynasty and QB 10 in redraft. Yeah. Dak Prescott's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree with that one. I'll add on another guy, similar caliber, Kyler Murray. I mean, it's still crazy that he's like, you can get him in like the late second of startups. I saw on a Dynasty data tool, I think he was like the 211, and on Sleeper ADP and Super Flex leagues, it's like
not
him
smash.
and Justin Herbert, you can get in the second round of startups. So I put a tweet out like, so I could legitimately trade out of the first round into the second round, have 2 second round picks, leave the draft going into round 3 with Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert, and probably get a massive plus on top for moving out of the first round of the second round. I wish I was doing startups this year because I literally absolutely dominate in startups. Like I move around like a monkey on jungle bars. Like I am always making moves, just jumping into different tiers and
Yeah.
accumulating value. Like I left that $200 startup league that I did last year with a bunch of just fantasy analysts on the site, like Zoltan and all those guys. Very, very fun league with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guys that know what they're doing. And like I just honestly was like, I'm gonna have fun with this. I'm gonna do a bunch of stuff I wouldn't normally do. And I have probably the second best, if not the first best team in the league right now after a 1 year punt and the most valuable team. So
Mm-hmm.
take risks. I got Kyler Murray at like the 301 or the 212 in that league at the time
Not
last year.
anymore.
And he's still there. It's like crazy
It's
that he's still
crazy.
in that 211 range.
He he's been going late first in the ones that I've seen. It was the guys especially that follow you and I, because I'm always putting hashtag always Kyler.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I want to talk about with Kyler Murray and Jordan Love, because Jordan Love's in that same boat for me, is like you have an opportunity here where the 2025 class does not have an elite level quarterback. I mean, can Shador Sanders be something that gives you solid value? Probably.
Carson Beck,
Is
someone
it
decent, yeah.
but there is not a quarterback, right? So I have a lot of teams talking to me right now and say, you know what, Dad, the rebuild process is great. I have CeeDee Lamb, I have Garrett Wilson, I have Malik Neighbors, I have Marvin Harrison, but man, I don't have a quarterback. And I'm saying to people, and this is kind of a different level thinking, because the 101 is traditionally worth considerably more. We say it's worth 30% more than the 102. I don't see a scenario next year, Snoog, where the 101 is worth that much more than the 102. So I have actually started to go out there and kick the tires of what looks to be the 101 for Kyler Murray, for Jordan Love, because those guys are worth a 101 plus in my book. I have, my buys out,
Absolutely.
and I right
101
now, I
plus a
mean,
first.
yeah. So like right now, I mean, I think guys that are worth more than the 101, I have about 13 guys. I would say Jaden Daniels is worth more than the 101, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, and Kyler Murray for sure. Possibly Brock Purdy, possibly Dak Prescott. But I feel like once you get to Purdy, Prescott, Lawrence, McCarthy, May, those are guys where I'm like, you know what, Snoop? I'll throw out the 101, and what's going to happen is I'm going to get the 101 plus. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to
It's
get one of these
crazy though,
quarterbacks
because
plus,
I think
because
Drake would
they're
have definitely been 101 in
oh,
that class.
100%.
JJ,
I
I
mean,
don't know about JJ. He wouldn't have been for me,
dude,
but I could have
he's
seen. I could
been
seen it.
he's a buy for me right now. He's been phenomenal in camp. If you look at the
He
numbers and
just
what he's
looks
doing,
like Zach Wilson's twin to me, and I just think
dude,
it's so
you can't
funny
get that
how
off your
people
head. But
say
he's
how
only
people
thrown one
say it.
interception at
He
camp.
throws
He's
the
looked,
same way too. Like he runs around and he like does
yeah.
the leg lift. He's better than Zach Wilson
Just
though.
so
He's a
thank you,
smart
thank you.
he's a smart football
We'll get
player.
we'll
He's
get that
not
out there.
Zach
But
Wilson.
I mean, he's become a buy low in a lot of opportunities. Same with Drake May, and if you have a multiple firsts in a make a shot for one of those guys. You know what I mean? Like if you have multiple shots and then you have like a Baker Mayfield, a Russell Wilson, an Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. If you're rebuilding, they have no purpose on your roster. Add a
Yeah.
first to those guys. Try to get yourself, because you're going to have to buy the quarterbacks. And if you're going to buy
Yeah.
the quarterbacks, the best time to do it for a rebuild is now. The second best time is after these guys are injured and they need another quarterback. Just establish value, get yourself into those scenarios. That was my second guy was Jordan Love, and I know that's like expensive buying.
Yeah.
My cheap buy or cheaper buy, which I've actually, Snook, I don't understand it, but I've been buying him for less than a first. I bought him once for a 26 first. I bought him once for a pair of 25 seconds. And then I paid the 202 after Trey Benson was gone for Will Levis. Okay. I know there's going to be some ugly plays for sure. Number one in hero throws, which are, amazing throws that we're making on the run. Now also number one in the bottom of the league in completion percentage, bottom of the league in, expected completions. But he's also at the top when it comes to deepest throws, when it comes to those big time throws. And I think we see an area where he's someone that I think can ascend in value. Like
Yeah.
do I want him long term? No, but he's going to have early on in the season, he's going to throw for 3 touchdowns in a game, and you're going to get a return of investment. And that's a lot of times where people don't realize that in Dynasty. They say, you know what? I don't like Xavier Worthy. I don't like Will Levis. I don't like player XYZ. Yeah, but you can see a path where that dude is going to give you a huge return on investment when Xavier Worthy scores gets 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. When Will Levis throws 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you're like, people start to see that ceiling again. And I'm okay with it at cost. Like I see a lot of people really going all in on Bryce Young, and at cost,
There's just no upside in Bryce.
I would rather have Will Levis. If I could trade Bryce Young for Will Levis in a second, I would do it, because I think Will Levis is going to give you some big boom games, where I think Bryce Young is going to ultimately, his ceiling to me is QB 15. Right now his cost is like QB 18. And there's a purpose for that, but he would have to be phenomenal, lights out the rest of the season, or the entire season, just for people to start recouping that value and forget about that rookie season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a tough thing with Bryce Young, but he is a good football player. I've always believed in that. I think he needs a certain system, but I think like the absolute ceiling is like what we saw with Russell Wilson in Seattle, which is, I mean, a friggin' if you could tell me Bryce Young's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, like how like Russ won Super Bowls, like he was contending in Super Bowls. He was phenomenal in Seattle. Right. But they're like the same size, same style of player, like that's the type of ceiling I see, but there's also not really much of a floor if he doesn't take a big step up. I think if he doesn't hit 4K yards this year and throw for like 20, 25 plus touchdowns, everyone's going to be like, this guy stinks. Even if he has a good year,
he has to.
Bounces back and throws for 3,700 yards and 25 touchdowns. I don't think that's enough for anyone to be like, all right, he's moving up in value. He's going to sit right where he is.
Canales is a huge upgrade. Adding Xavier Legette,
he's going to help
Deontay
a lot.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Are great.
Big
but
upgrade.
I think those aren't. His
situation's a lot better than it was last year. Like, it's not the worst in the league anymore at all. It's like pretty good.
Those are not elite level athletes though. See, that's the thing, is we're excited for Deontay Johnson. We're excited for Xavier Legette. But we're not saying that he added Malik Neighbors or added Odunze. We're like, so that's where people. Right now, I mean, I have him as my QB 20. I dropped him one spot behind Deshaun Watson, because I am really in on Deshaun Watson at this point, really to take that next step up. But I mean, you look at 16 through 19. I mean, it's Tua, McCarthy, May, Goff, Watson. I'll take all of them over Young, and then you look at the next tier down, and then it's like he's kind of in a weird spot where if I have any of those other 19, I feel pretty good. Like I'm all right with that guy as my QB 2. Then you look at, he's QB 20, 21. I have Levis, Baker, Nix, Cousins, Stafford. And then it falls off hard after that, because then you're banking on Justin Fields starting. You're banking on, Russell Wilson starting. You're banking on Derek Carr not being a, trash sandwich. You're banking on Daniel Jones bouncing back to form. Like, there's a lot of guys here at that quarterback position you want to, go ahead and buy. Another guy, like a lot of people keep coming to me and they're like, Dad, I'm going to offer my 25 first for Justin Fields. And I'm like, ooh.
He's a guy that I want to buy, not a first.
I know. That's what I keep saying.
Gets it done all day.
There was a guy, people keep talking to me and they're like, I want to trade my 25 first for Justin Fields. And I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it. I'm going to find a way where if I could
I actually do think he's going to be the starter there, though.
I do too, but I don't want to pay for that.
He just adds so much value, and that's like the type of offense Arthur Smith wants to run. Is a play action offense. You don't have to pay for
it yet, though.
No.
So what do you do? What do you do? Yeah, like, do you give up? Right now I have him as my QB 27, right under Matthew Stafford, right under Michael Penix Jr., above Russell, Rodgers, Carr, Jones, and Smith. So, I mean, if I have those guys as my QB4, I want Justin Fields as my QB4 instead of Aaron Rodgers. Like if I don't have a spot where I'm going to get him into my lineup. The tricky part is, where do you commit, right? Like, because I don't want Justin Fields as my QB2 on any team. I don't want him I'm okay with him as my 3, but then you almost have to have another quarterback ready. You know what I mean?
I would have like
if you have Allen Stroud, like you and I do on so many teams, where it's like you have 2 elite guys, and then it's like, oh, well, you know what? I can take a shot on Justin Fields as my QB3, but ultimately I want him as my QB4. And if you have an embarrassment of riches of quarterbacks like that, then you go and you make some of those offers. You try to kick the tires and see what you can get. I would pay a pair of seconds, for sure. I would pay the 204, I think. Maybe 205 if I was doing a rookie draft still. But I think Justin Fields is a huge high risk, high reward. And even if he does start, we don't know it's going to be the whole season. But he's a guy where if you are in quarterback purgatory and you're a spot where it's like no one's trading quarterbacks, I would pay my 26 first if I knew it was going to be late. I would not pay him at 25. So Fields is an interesting one. I'm going to dig deeper on that today once I start, going through some more of these buys. Let's move to the wide receiver position because I want to talk running backs at the end. I want to go heavy with the running backs because you and I talk about that a lot. We talked about Drake May being a buy. I keep saying Jalen Polk for a mid-second and 25s right now. I think Jalen Polk really could have 1,000 yards.
Why not the real wide receiver one in New England, though?
I knew it was going to come. You mean if you say Pop Douglas, I'm leaving.
No,
you're like, this podcast is over.
Polk and Baker are smash buys, but no lie, I think Baker truly has a higher ceiling. And I think they'll both truly be involved early on. I think if Drake May's quarterback, Javon Baker's the guy. If Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback, Jalen Polk's the guy.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be Brissett early. The other thing that I keep telling people is don't overinvest in these guys. Like I had someone message me the other day, and they were like, I forget who they were trading. I think it was DK Metcalf for Javon Baker in a second. I was like, whoa, don't do that.
Too. I saw one. It was like Baker and Polk for like Tank Dell in like a second or a third.
No, here's the cautionary part of this, and Snoog and I have been saying this. The wide receiver 1 for the Patriots is going to be drafted or signed next year, period. Yeah. But these guys are nice wide receiver 2, and then a little bit more upside, maybe a flex play. I'm a little bit cautious to say, okay, let's trade something that could be elite like Tank Dell or DK Metcalf and get ourselves into there. If you want to move on,
look at how the Texans viewed Nico and Tank. Nico and Tank had a great year, and they still were like, we need to address the position.
Right. And those guys, let's be honest, from a talent perspective, I still think Nico and Tank are miles ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about running back or wide receivers in that area. Who are some other guys that, you're like, these guys are way too cheap right now?
I still think Dontavian Wicks is a really good buy low. I'm going to throw Romeo Doubs in there with him, though, because I think those two are going to they're going to hash it out for the X spot. I think if you just break it down for who's the most talented player and they're on the team, it's Reed, but I think Wicks is the second most talented there to play the X. I think he's the best route runner, the most polished, just the most raw, big bodied guy there is there. I don't think Doubs or Watson really have that ceiling to develop into that true polished X. Romeo Doubs is an alpha X. Dude's 6 feet, 190 pounds, and he's I don't know, he's just not that guy that you're third and long, I'm going to throw the ball up to Romeo Doubs, or third and long, let's draw something up for Romeo Doubs, right? You see that type of potential in Wicks potentially getting there, and that's where I really want, I could be wrong, there's a very good chance I'm wrong. I'm going against consensus with that, because he's the 4th guy on the depth chart, that's what they're all saying in training camp. But it's the fact that he can get to a level that those other guys can't get, which is why I'm willing to invest into him, especially when he's the cheapest guy. But Doubs, too. One of these guys is going to score 10 touchdowns. It's probably Reed. But you're paying that price already for Jaden Reed.
I'm going to throw this out there a while. Because from weeks 4 to 13, only one Green Bay Packer guy was top 10 in the NFL in red zone targets. He was also first in end zone targets, and it was Christian Watson, man. I'm telling you, keep discounting him, but 5 touchdowns in that stretch right there. He was healthy. When he was healthy, he's still the guy.
For me, it's if he just gets hurt one more time, he's
toast.
He's just toast. And I don't care to invest in that when I can get Amari Cooper.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. Enough Packers. We're gonna put that the rest of August. No more Packer talk unless it's Jordan Love. But the guys that I have right now, and this is what I put for my top 12 buys, is I'm looking at buys at cost. And Snoog, I put Malik Neighbors, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave, and people are like, that's stupid. But where they're at right now, they're not at their ceiling for value cost. They're not in that area of those are guys that I'm saying, you know what, if I need one more piece to the puzzle, or I have, I drafted 5 wide receivers in this class. I made a trade for Malik Neighbors the other day where I traded Brian Thomas Jr. and who was it? Brian Thomas Jr., Ricky Purcell in a second. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that all day because Malik Neighbors is a prize in this class. I think Olave and Wilson are guys that are going to increase in value. And then I do it where I was looking at buy lows. And these are guys that I know you and I have loved this entire offseason, and they're still not priced properly. is George Pickens and Zay Flowers, and I'm going to add to that list Rashee Rice. Is
Yep.
like Rashee Rice is costing you a second right now. I bought him the other day for a 25 second and Gus Edwards, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like he is absolutely going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team, and he's not going to get suspended. And if he does, it's next year. Zay Flowers, absolute wide receiver 1 for this team. Mark Andrews is back, so temper expectations a little bit. But if Mark Andrews goes down again, Zay Flowers we saw what he could do when Mark Andrews is not on the field.
Yeah.
George Pickens is still being priced as if the Steelers are going to trade for a wide receiver 2. Just stop. George Pickens is going to be a top 15 wide receiver this year. Like these 3 guys to me just don't make any sense at how cheap they are.
Yeah. Everyone wants to talk about what Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave are going to do going into year 3 with the new quarterbacks and the upgrades because they had Ritter, they had Andy Dalton before Carr, they had Zach Wilson. It's like George Pickens had a way better career start than Drake London did. He had just as good as Chris Olave, just on a pure raw stat perspective, not analytic wise. And all these guys in that second year, right? Like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were absolutely elite in year 1. Trumps everybody else in that whole class on what they did. But George Pickens hung with those guys in year 2. Like he put up 1,100 yards with equally bad QB play. That quarterback room put up like 13 passing touchdowns. He's the clear number 1 option there, like Chris Olave is. I don't think he's as good as these guys as just like a overall talent, but he's so damn good at what he does. He's going to get the right quarterback in Fields or Russell Wilson that are going to lean on that number 1 guy because that's what they know. Like, I need to get the ball downfield and move it if I want to be the starter. George Pickens is literally the best option that you can have on your team for that perspective. I mean, DJ Moore pays 1,500 plus yards with Fields last year. Fields was lights out with DJ Moore, and Sutton had 10 touchdowns. So either way, you're getting some sort of upside with these quarterbacks there. In Pittsburgh, he's the clear number 1 option. He's the guy that I'm big on this year, and we've talked about him a ton. I want to talk about a guy that you and I both love. This is, if you're looking at it just from my favorite wide receiver perspectives, it's Garrett Wilson and it's this guy, and it's Devonta Smith. He's the guy that I've been quiet on a little bit lately because I just feel like everyone just knows what you're getting from Devonta Smith, but I don't think people realize the ceiling that Devonta Smith can get to. This guy pays back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, top 10 finishes in both of them, pacing. And he's the guy that was just a safe 14-plus points per game at a young age there in that Eagles run-heavy offense. They had Brian Johnson, I think his name was last year. He was absolutely horrific at offensive coordinator. Losing Shane Steichen was the death of that team offensively. Now they're bringing in Kellen Moore, who's a guy that uses motion at an absurd amount. The Chargers were the 5th most used motion team last year. Keenan Allen in 2023 last year was pacing to lead the league in receptions. Absolutely phenomenal in a per game perspective. Top 5, top 6 finish in 12 games. 100 receptions in 12 games. CeeDee Lamb last year in 2 years ago in 2022 was also phenomenal. He had a top 5 finish, 1,400 plus yards. Kellen Moore uses these elite route runners and these very fundamentally sound wide receivers that Devonta Smith fits that mold as extremely well with motion and in the slot and getting mismatches. That's how Devonta Smith was used at Alabama during that Heisman season. He was a guy that if he plays the slot fully, last year he had a 27% target per route run out of the slot. And that's his career target per route run out of the slot. 27% is ridiculous. If he can get that, even 25, or if he can get 30, let's just say, with Kellen Moore there now out of the slot, he's going to be a guy that could be a top 5 finisher. It could be Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones that year, where Ridley had a top 4, top 3 finish and absolutely broke out 1,400 plus yards. I could see Smith getting there, surprisingly or not. I think Devonta Smith has a really high ceiling in this Eagles offense next year, and it's just going to be him and A.J. Brown show all over again there.
Yeah, it looks like Johnny Wilson's actually looking the guy that might be the wide receiver 3 there. So if he's on your waivers, go get him. Devonta Smith right now is the wide receiver 23 in redraft, 47 picks behind A.J. Brown. I did a piece the other day where I was looking at, let's take a look at what happens with these guys. Because Cooper Kupp, the wide receiver 21, goes 28 picks after Puka Nacua. Tank Dell, wide receiver 29, goes 35 picks after Nico Collins. We just talked about Devonta, 47 picks after A.J. Brown. And Keenan Allen goes 27 picks after DJ Moore. And when you're talking about elite level offenses, give me the second guy, right? Because Devonta Smith is a wide receiver 1 on a lot of teams. He just happens to have A.J. Brown in front of him. Like, I'm buying Dell, I'm buying Kupp, I'm buying Devonta, I'm buying Keenan, I'm buying guys that are wide receiver 2s on elite level offenses because the path that you're buying a really safe floor with Devonta Smith. And I found that the Dynasty community doesn't think that's sexy, Snoop. They're like, Devonta Smith went from like wide receiver 12 to wide receiver 14. A lot of people now have him like wide receiver 18. And it's like, bro, this is still Devonta Smith. Like he's still, I believe,
Nasty.
25 years old. He's someone that's absolutely, you're right, he's nasty, incredible route runner, someone that stayed extremely healthy. Before that was the biggest knock where people didn't want to invest because they were worried that, because of his size, that he was going to get hurt. Devonta Smith is a screaming buy, and he's a great guy that in Dynasty, if you have, Tyreek Hill and you have another elite level guy, to have Devonta Smith as your super safe wide receiver 3, even your wide receiver 2, you should be perfectly fine going out and rolling with Devonta Smith. Keenan Allen's another guy that was just late like that. Tank Dell, we want to say that it's going to be Nico Collins, and I believe Nico Collins is that guy. But if Nico goes down, I mean, Tank Dell's value is going to rise considerably. Cooper Kupp, I'm like, man, they said he's 100%. They said he looks healthy. They said he looks the same. I'm buying him where I can in Dynasty because he is extremely cheap. He doesn't cost a first anymore. A lot of people, if I could trade Nuke in a second, I know Nuke's hurt now, so that's kind of bad timing. But I mean, there's a lot of guys that I would be willing to tear up off of because the ceiling for Cooper Kupp in 2024 is top 12. The floor is top 20, because he paced out at top 20 last year in a horrific year. So, I mean, if you have a Christian Kirk, a Chris Godwin, who else do we have in that same kind of mold? Those guys where you're like, I would add a second to those guys. I would go up, or I would add a second to Kupp and a third. Like, I want to get myself, I feel like Kupp, now that is healthy, I mean, is closer to that Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, and Stephon Diggs range than he is the Keenan Allens, the Chris Godwins, the Terry McLaurin, the DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I think he's closer to that area because as long as Stafford's there, like what he's been able to do pace-wise with Matthew Stafford has been freaking otherworldly. Like Cooper Kupp is going to get his.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. Cooper Kupp there. Amari Cooper, I'd throw him in, obviously.
Yeah.
He's the guy we're both super high on. I mean, averaged like 17 plus points per game with Deshaun Watson last year. Paced I think he had 1,250 receiving yards last year, which was a career high in just 15 games. Paced 1,400. Mm-hmm. Browns are going to have a really good offense. I mean, it's going to be in the hands of Deshaun Watson. Can he get there? Can he be just decent? Can he be what Joe Flacco was? Like, that's really what it's going to come down to. But, I mean, Amari's a clear number 1 option. This offense should be in the top half of the league in points scored. It should be a top 15, top 20 offense at least. It's definitely not going to be bottom 10. And, I mean, like, if you look at just, like, my boy Dan Wisner on Twitter at, I think it's DA Wiz, really good guy over there doing a lot of good stuff with the undroppables. But he posted a thing of, like, every metric that matters since 2022 on Amari Cooper, and Amari was like top 15 and everything. And that's like the things you want to look at, right? Because Amari's had so many different quarterbacks, so many different bad situations, and it's like we've seen his floor. We know what his floor is. It's top 15, it's top 20. His ceiling, though, we haven't seen that yet, and I still firmly believe that. I think last year we could have really seen it if he played a full 17 games. I think he could have been a guy that went for like 1,400 and like 9 touchdowns. Probably finished top 5.
First year in Dallas, I think he finished top 6. You know what I mean?
Really?
He finished pretty high up there. But he's definitely got that dog in him. Definitely go out and buy Kupp, go out and buy Amari, go out and buy those veterans. I was looking at another guy to add to that. I mean, red zone targets last year, Cooper Kupp was 10th. When you look at the final 6 games when he was healthy, he only trailed CeeDee Lamb and Calvin Ridley for red zone targets. Calvin Ridley is a red zone machine. And now with DeAndre Hopkins going down for 4 to 6 weeks, and we know what that means when a guy's 31 years old, right? Like, there is a strong chance that the body doesn't heal And I'm fading DeAndre Hopkins now, and I'm moving in on Calvin Ridley because I think Ridley could have a huge bounce back year. Last year was his first year back. It did not work well. The chemistry with Trevor Lawrence was not there, but the targets were there. The quality of targets were there. It was just, it didn't quite lock up. So
Yeah.
let's move to those running backs, because this is where you and I have said it all offseason. We've been talking Amari Cooper. We've been talking George Pickens. We've been talking all those wide receivers that you should buy. And then we've been saying buy these running backs on the cheap. You cannot buy these guys on the cheap anymore. But who are the guys? Who are the running backs? What are we paying? How do we look at running backs in August? Because if I go out there and I buy James Conner now, or I buy Joe Mixon now, could he go down to injury? If those guys go down to injury, there's next to no value there. Like, what's the timing frame, right? If I go buy Travis Etienne right now, I think that's one of the best dynasty running back buys there is, and I feel I'm okay with it. If he tweaks his hamstring and he misses the first 4 weeks, I don't care, right? But if we see the similar thing with you go buy James Conner, he goes down to injury pretty early, like that value's dead.
Yeah. I think I'm waiting till the day training camp ends, and then I'm making moves on running backs. That's kind of the strategy I've been doing in a lot of my leagues. I just bought Jahmyr Gibbs off Zoltan in one of my big money leagues just because it's Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'll buy him any time of the year. I needed a superstar. I literally had 0 running backs on my roster.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to make a splash move for one. I'm going to get that hero RB, and then I'm going to pair up 3 to 4 James Conner, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Joneses, and maybe like a Zamir White in there, and just get some bodies in there that can put up some big weeks there at the RB2 spot. I mean, my wideouts are set. My quarterbacks are set. You got to just feel out your leagues. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you any specific guys, Alvin Kamara, but I'm going to tell you that there's just buying running backs that are the cheapest that will produce are the best ways to approach it. All right, yeah. Aaron Jones is more expensive than James Conner in this league. Go buy James Conner. Alvin Kamara is going to cost a first in this league, but I could get James Conner in a second or 2 seconds for a first in this league. Go get James Conner. All right, Joe Mixon's only a second in this league, but he's a first in this league. Buy him in the other league. Don't buy him in that league. Yeah. That's literally all it comes down to.
It's based off of who those rosters are, and you and I talk about this a lot, is right now what I'm doing if I'm trying to buy a running back is I am going down through the bottom 3 guys in every one of my leagues. And I'm saying, you know what? This guy's got Chase Brown. He doesn't need him. Who am I? You know what I mean? I'm looking over there. This guy's got Austin Eckler. This guy has, Tajay Spears. This guy has, and I'm looking at those kind of guys. I'm just saying, this guy doesn't need this running back. You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason this guy should have him. So at this point, I'm going to try to make a deal that I think makes sense for him. You talked about those key dates. I mean, August 8th through 11th is preseason week 1. I'm still not doing it. August 15th to 18th, preseason week 2. Then we have August 22nd to the 25th, and that's that dress rehearsal. That's one where everybody kind of plays a little bit longer. And if they cross through that, Snoog, that's when I buy. August 22nd to 25th will be those games. Then the 27th is cut down day. Then we kick off September 5th. So it's like you'll still have that 2-week window. Buy cheap, like Snoog said right now. Like, now is not the time to, overinvest in a running back that is a little bit older. You can go ahead and you can invest in guys that are, like we said, I'm investing in Travis Etienne right now. I'm going to invest in, a lot of guys right now that I think you could buy for a late first, even like a Kenneth Walker. I think there's a situation in Seattle what this offense is going to look like. So like he's a guy that I think you could buy there. We're talking about holding off on buying the Derrick Henry types unless that's something that really jumps out at you. Go buy Jalen Warren. Treat it right now in early August like it's 0 RB. Buy those kind of guys, the cheap guys, the guys that are, if you started today. I mean, honestly, I have rosters where I could start Tajay Spears and Jalen Warren as my RB1 and RB2, and because the rest of my quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends are so dominant, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be in contention. Then I can buy those guys later, and that's what I try to do with that running back position. If you can get, I got a couple offers in my inbox the other day. Actually, someone trying to trade me Breece Hall. Like, if you can go get, I think Breece Hall is going to just skyrocket. Travis Etienne. We've been talking about.
I like Achane.
Dude, Achane's way too cheap for what he could possibly do.
Achane and Etienne are my favorite buys. Just that cost and where they're going in startups and the market overall, not even just the running back position, just overall where they're going. those are the two hero guys I'd go for if I'm going to draft one.
For sure. And I mean, I also I think Chase Brown ends up, I mean, I was big on the Zach Moss train. And if you can get him cheaper, do it. But based off the news, like Chase Brown has been on a yards per route run and on a receiving aspect. If he can get the pass pro down, I think this is a guy one of these guys in Cincinnati is going to pan out for sure because this offense is so good. Jerome Ford is beyond cheap right now. If I'm going and you see the news that Deonta Foreman, he's pretty much done. That was a major injury.
Ford's going to have a really good start.
What's that?
Ford's going to have a really good start.
Oh, Ford's going to have a great start. And I think Pierre Strong is the second guy. I don't think Nick Chubb's going to be ready right off the bat. And you got to kind of look at that camp news. You got to look at things. You don't want to overcount it, but you don't want to undercount it. You want to make sure, you go and you add, like Atlanta's talking about Algier might get 30% of the carries. I don't think that's going to happen, but why not? If you have Bijan, buy him cheap. If you don't have Bijan, still buy him cheap. Get him thrown into deals because these guys are worth less than a second or a late second that you could just absolutely smash on. Last piece of the puzzle that I feel better buying right now, Snoog, is that tight end position. We talk about we want to form it around wide receivers and quarterbacks, and then you're like, I can buy the running backs, but we'll wait till late. Tight ends rarely go down to injury. Now's when I'm looking at all my 20 rosters right now, and I'm like, which teams have this tight end? Who can I add in these areas? Right now, the guys that I'm trying to add on the cheap have been Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson. I'm trying to add those guys cheap. Dallas Goedert's super cheap too. If you need somebody that doesn't cost a lot, there's those kind of guys. I'm seeing a lot of rosters where people are really competitive and they're trying to get rid of TJ Hawkinson because they don't think TJ Hawkinson could be back week 6. Get a fill in, get a Dalton Schultz, get a Cade Otton, get someone to fill in. If you can buy, I got Hawkinson the other day for Musgrave in an early second, and I'm just going to go run to the bank because every single year he has been top 5, so let's not worry about the injury too much. Obviously Kyle Pitts is going to cost you a little bit more. The Kittle, Ingram, and Njoku area is always great production for costs. How do you go about the tight ends here? Because let's be honest, Laporta, McBride, Bowers, and Kincaid are going to cost you so much that you're going to deplete your team.
George Kittle is the guy. That's all I'm buying. He's my most owned Dynasty tight end, and I think he's my second or third most Dynasty player in general. Yeah. If Brandon Ayuk leaves, George Kittle's in contention for tight end 1 overall. And that's just facts. He's on arguably the best offense in the NFL that runs through him in a lot of game scripts. It's funny because the way the 49ers work is it seems like each game's a different player that has their big game, right? And it rotates because they script so well for certain defensive schemes. But George Kittle's a guy that can just score a touchdown in 1 catch and then boom, he has a good week. Especially in tight end premium leagues, right? Where it's 0.75 per reception and he has 4 or 5 catches and scores. That's a 25-point week just there, right? So that's why I'm big on George Kittle. I think some other guys, some cheap options I really like. Kobe Parkinson has a great chance at being that tight end 1 in LA for the Rams. Hayden Hurst, a deep dart throw. He has a chance of beating the tight end 1 for the Chargers. Justin Herbert always kind of leans on his tight end, so they always have a spot of value. Greg Dulcich has a chance of being just the Broncos' number 1 option, honestly. The Broncos got nothing there. They got no tight ends. It's going to be Dulcich there. He's a good talent, good prospect coming out of school. And then another guy, actually, too, that I think is a good dart throw and just a good player is Hunter Henry. Those are 4 cheap guys that I've been trying to just buy and get on my rosters everywhere just because I know what they are. I know what they can be. They could have that top 10 year, right, with a couple touchdowns that they get under their belt that we didn't expect or some volume that was unexpected because tight end is all about clear path to volume. Do they have a quarterback that throws to them, and are they a part of the scheme? A lot of these tight ends are used as run blockers and stuff like that. But if you can get these guys like how Evan Ingram just went onto the scene last year, right, and becomes this 100 reception guy that is just a target hog, or if you got these guys, these breakout guys, like Cole Kmet comes out of nowhere and scores a bunch of touchdowns last year. Hunter Henry can be like that. He's been like that. So that's why those guys You give up fourths for him. You get him on the roster. You have Hawkinson. All right, I got Hunter Henry for the first 4 weeks. Then I have TJ Hawkinson to play when he comes back. So those are some good strategies as well.
The other guy that I'm back in on, I used to love him, is Pat Freiermuth. I think Pat Freiermuth could be second in line in targets in Pittsburgh, unless you talk to running backs, but I think he could end up being a guy that scores 10 touchdowns this year and is cheap at cost right now. He's got the tight end 16 in Dynasty, so I feel like he's got good value for where he's at. I'm noticing a lot of people, and I don't really understand it, but they're discounting Mark Andrews. They're saying on a per game basis, this guy's top 5 year in and year out. He will be there. That's someone where I feel like you can tear up on. And Travis Kelce, now's the time to add him, right? I think Travis Kelce scores 12 plus touchdowns this year. This is the first year in the last 4 that he didn't score 10 touchdowns. I think this year's a lock. You and I have been talking about that, where it's like, if it's 0.75 and you're this is the last piece of the puzzle, now's the time you buy Kelce. Yeah. Kelce's value is, it's not that much right now. You could probably get Kelce for Kittle, Ingram, Njoku, Ferguson, one of those guys in a second. And I just think, as much as I think George Kittle is the best tight end in football, bar none, fantasy perspective, there has to be something. He's going to have some boom weeks where Kelce's just going to get it done week in and week out. And Snoog, we're almost in football season, so like this is that time where our DMs are crazy. We're trying to answer as much as we can on Twitter. We're really focusing on answering everything in the Discord within, usually 4 to 8 hours, guaranteed within 24 hours, because there's so many questions right now, but it's a fun time of year. We're excited to see what happens here in the next couple of weeks. Training camp, hit us up for trades. I'm at DynastyDadFF. He's at FFSnoog. Check out the YouTube page. Thanks again for tuning in. Enjoy the process. Hey, yo.
Boom.